This is a Seaward 42, and this is a boat for when you get serious, and I mean really serious, about your boating, because this is based on a Nelson 40 pilot hull. This is basically the boat that the pilots use. The guys who have to go out in all weathers, regardless, out to big ships in the channel or indeed all around the world. This is what they use. But what Seaward do then is basically put a leisure interior in it, and what you end up with is probably the most capable leisure boat in the world. So we're going to take a turn around this one, a look on board, a look in the interior, and show you what it's all about. Now, I mentioned there's pilot credentials, and they're obvious right from the start with this pilot rail here. So rather than having rails that go down the outside of the boat as you normally have, you have the rail on the inside. The reason for this is so that pilots can hop on and off to ships and docks and that kind of thing. So you can see wherever you are on this boat, you can just step on and step off very easily. And look at this huge D-section fender they put all the way around it, so it's not going to take any damage, and it can really take the knocks. It's proper serious kit. Let's head up onto the bow. This flooring here is called Treadmaster, and it's like a sort of rubber finish, but it is super grippy, and it's designed so the water drains straight through and off it. So again, as you move around the boat, you're never going to slip on it. It's about the grippiest surface that you can get. You've got these serious bollards here for tying the boat up, and in fact you'll also notice that where the fairleads are, there are stainless steel strips, so that if you have ropes that come straight up to here and they cut across here, they're not going to rub on the gel coat. They're all the way around the boat. Wherever there are cleats, there are those rubbing strips. But I think the word we're looking for here is purposeful. This really is a super purposeful boat. We'll head down this side, and of course I'll take you around the interior as well. Again, that pilot rail is just guiding us all the way around. You've got these three big wipers on the front. Antennas are here, and as we move on back down, you can see at the back things like the Raymarine digital radar scanner, and further back, that thing that looks like a can up on the top is actually a passive radar reflector. There's also AIS, so the boat can be picked up by other ships and it can see other ships' movements, and you've got GPS antenna, TV antenna, all that kind of stuff, all up there on the top. And then we come right to the very back, and you can see back here there is a bathing platform. That's the one thing that's changed slightly from the Nelson 40 hull, is you wouldn't normally have a bathing platform because pilots don't tend to do a lot of bathing, but on a leisure boat that's more important. These are Weaver snap davits on here, so this dinghy just clips on and lifts up against the back of the boat. These standoff bars hold it in place, and the skipper of this one was telling me they've been out in some incredible conditions and that always stays absolutely put, no problem at all. And the boarding ladder is over on that side, and that's designed so that if you were to fall in the water, you can release that boarding ladder and drop it actually from in the water. Anyway, let's go and have a look on board, and we'll see what the interior looks like. So this is your cockpit, dead easy to get into because there's steps down on both sides, and there's a door at the back, and that takes you out onto that platform where that ladder was we were looking at a second ago. You can see those Weaver snap davits a little bit better here now. We can also see a huge Sunseeker just motoring into Ocean Village at the moment. Very smart. Let's carry on. This is pretty much the total opposite of that, actually. That's designed for style. This is designed just for absolute practicality. So look at, for example, the framework for this canopy. It's absolutely rock solid. And again, you're out in some big serious seas, none of that is going anywhere. And again, the skipper said to me, they never take this down. They just leave it up the whole time and it's absolutely fine. And they have been through some serious seas with this. They don't mess about. Let's head on in. You'll see little bits of safety kit around the place. This is a float-free EPIRB, so that in a real serious danger situation, if the boat was sinking, that would float free and set off a distress signal. Obviously, something you hope you never need. And then in here, the interior. Very traditional. Now, the thing to mention about these Seawards is they do not build these boats for stock. They only build them to owner specification. And when you're buying one of these, you choose whatever you want in here. So it is relatively compact compared to a 42-foot flybridge boat, for example, because it's quite narrow and very seriously focused on seakeeping above all else. But that said, there is plenty of space in here. And as I say, you have whatever you choose in here. And this one's been fitted out by an owner who wanted sleeping for two permanent, occasional extra sleeping, and just lots of space then for two people to really enjoy the boat. So we've got a saloon area out the back here. You can take that backrest off and sleep an extra person on there if you want to. And opposite that, you've got the sideboard and the bar area. So this, for example, is your glasses and bottles and so on. And they look like they'd fall over, but again, the skipper was telling me they've never had any of those drop over, and it's testimony to the seakeeping of this boat. It's a proper punch through anything kind of machine. Okay, let's head on forward a bit further. Again, you can see how serious this is. Look at these seats. These are suspension seats. You can see the suspension units underneath. So again, it's when you're punching through really big seas, that is to take the shock out of hitting huge waves at high speeds. And we'll talk about the performance in a little while, of course. This I must show you. This is, again, straight off of pilot boat specifications. So that slides, that's pretty normal, but when that's closed, you can wind these here. This one winds like that, and the one above does the same thing. What that's doing is pulling the window really hard against the seal, so that when you're punching, literally punching through massive waves, you're not getting water through there. You're not going to find that system on a Sunseeker. And that's not to criticise Sunseeker, that's just to underscore the point of this boat, which is a proper, serious offshore boat. Here at the helm, we have got twin screens, as you can see. There's also this system, which is your engine instrumentation. You can see it's got 2 fuel gauges on either side. That's because it's got long-range tanks. So you've got the standard tanks, which are a bit over 1,000 litres on each side, and then another 500 litres to give you extra range. There's bow and stern thrusters on here. There's a Humphrey trim tab system. There's also a gyro stabiliser on this boat. And then this steering wheel, you can see it's right down here. You don't normally use the wheel once you're out at sea. You run these things on autopilot most of the time, but there it is. And in fact, you can adjust that. So there's a button here. If I push that one in, a bit tricky with one hand and a GoPro. Let's hold on to the wheel at the same time. Here we go. And now we can lift that up, so that if you want to bring it into play, you can do, or you can drop it down out of the way. And interestingly as well, let's drop that back down. You'll see there's a footrest down at the bottom. If I put my feet on that footrest, the seat is now sunk slightly, and the footrest then, push the button, you can adjust the height of that. So you can really set this whole helm up, the steering wheel, the footrest, the seat adjust as well, of course, and get it exactly how you want it for long distance cruising. What else can I show you on here? This is interesting. This is the switching system for the boat. So this controls all the circuit breakers, and it means that when you come onto the boat, you can just hit on board, and everything that you need for when you're on the board the boat, the lights, the fridge and everything will come on automatically. When you want to get underway, you hit underway and it brings in all the navigation kit and other things. So you have presets. So you're not switching everything on and off, you're just hitting the main function buttons you want and it does everything for you. You've even got things like the foghorn. When you're underway in thick fog, you can switch on to the presets here and it will send out the sound signals needed for a boat underway in thick fog. There's another of those seats over on this side. Again, super comfortable, and again, this amazing system for locking and sealing the window. And then you've got overhead hatches as well. Let's head on down a little bit further. Now down here again, it is completely configurable however you want. Seaward will do pretty much whatever you require. Now what this owner has gone for is a big dinette down here opposite the galley. This will in fact convert, so you can drop that table down, you can take the cushions out around the back, and that makes a big double bed. So again, for occasional sleeping, you've got it if you want it. And I will show you this while we're here. This is the Empire bus system. Now that is that switching panel that I showed you up at the helm. These are the manual overrides, so that if ever that system wasn't working, you can get into here and you can manually switch anything on and off that's required. So again, it's kind of all part of the unstoppable nature of this boat. Opposite here then is the galley, and this owner's gone for big freezers over here. In fact, it's one freezer but with 2 lids. And again, like the extra range fuel tanks, it's all about his intention to be able to go out and stay out almost regardless. There's the gas oven here, and there's also a Miele microwave tucked in the background. Another thing the skipper was telling me, and this is tantamount to the seakeeping of this boat, he said, we've had this coffee machine here and we've never put it away, and we've punched through some amazing seas and that's never moved. And that's just, as I say, testimony to how these boats go through the water. There is a big fridge in there, and then storage underneath here. You've got your sink. These are just sections that are designed to go into the oven, and you can see the plate stowage at the back. Now, there's been a couple of different options that people have chosen. One owner has actually opted to have a door back here. The galley made a bit smaller and had another cabin put back there. Now the engines are under the floor, so you'd think, well, how is that possible? What Seaward did for him was to put the engines further back in the boat, and they used V-drives. So you had your engine, normally you have an engine and then a shaft and then the propeller, all in a line like that. What this had was the engine back here, the drive went forward through a V-drive and then back underneath to the shaft. So they literally redesigned the engineering of the boat to accommodate the sort of layout that he wanted inside. So it just shows what can be done. Up here, this owner has chosen to go for V-berths in the forward cabin. Again, a popular option on this is to move this bulkhead back very slightly. That makes space for a double bed in the front there if you want it. You still get this area, but it's just made slightly smaller. So however you choose to lay it out, they'll do it for you. As long as it will fit within the boat, you can have it. But this is this owner's specification. Up in here then you've got, of course, your wardrobes and that kind of stuff, and shelving. And also up here, there's one heads on this boat, that's in here. You can see it's got Jack and Jill doors, as they're known. So there's a doorway there, so that can be used straight from the passageway, because you don't need to come into this cabin to get in and use the loo. And it's a pretty good size. There's a shower screen that comes around, so it protects the doors, make sure no water comes out. So that acts like a wet room then. There's one other thing I particularly want to show you in here, which is this boat has got a massive amount of stainless steel chain. That's normally the chain on these boats is galvanized steel. Stainless is very expensive and very cool. So there's actually a hatch here and a switch here, so that at night, if he wants to, he can illuminate it. How cool is that? I think that's fantastic. It turns into a little work of art, and again, really sums up the serious nature of this boat when you're using anchor chain as your art. It's fantastic. Okay, let's head on back a little bit further, and we'll talk about the performance, and we'll talk about the seakeeping of this, because seakeeping is really what this boat is all about. Let's head on back through here. Now I want to explain a little bit about the hull. I won't go into too much depth because you can Google it, but this is a semi-displacement boat. What that means is rather than getting up onto the plane out of the water and then bouncing across the top, which is how most boats work, and that's quite an efficient and fast way of getting across the water. The problem with that is that when it gets really rough, your skimming across the top becomes bouncing across the top if you're not careful. This is semi-displacement, so it doesn't get up onto the plane, it just lifts out the water a little bit so it can get above normal hull speeds, and then it pushes through the water. And that means that when you hit a wave, rather than coming over and bouncing over it, you just punch through it. And that's why these are so popular with pilots and so on, because even when it cuts up really rough, they just hammer straight through it. They don't bounce and crash over it. Let's go right back to the cockpit. Underneath here, we've got the lazarette. There's an 8 kilowatt generator in here, so that's providing all your 240 volt needs. There's also an 8 kilowatt inverter in here as well, apparently. So you've got power even without the generator running. There's a seakeeper in here. Fire extinguishing systems, of course, are in here as well. I think that's the seakeeper back there, actually, in that box. And then storage for stuff like all your deck gear and boat cleaning stuff and all that kind of stuff is also in there. And talking of storage, one thing I must show you, which I skipped past earlier, is out here on the outside, because this is a neat idea. If we flip these, that there is your fender storage. So you can bring your fenders back down the side decks, just drop them straight into there. I think that's great. And I mentioned those rubbing strips. You can see them here again, so that if you bring the lines forward from here and down to a cleat down there, for example, you're not chafing on the GRP. Engines is the last thing to talk about, and for this we just need to slide that saloon door closed. There's a little release on, you can see on here. Again, it's all designed to make sure that nothing is flying around when you're out at sea, and it's cutting up rough. And then we head down in here to access them. These then lock off to make sure it doesn't drop. That holds that really firm. And we'll head on down. We'll very quickly show you this. I think that's an XPS 48. Not seen one of those before. It's a bit of a beast. let's carry on. Okay, so this is the engine space. Now this is just an inspection hatch. Obviously you can lift the floor in here to get to servicing and that kind of thing. But in here you'll find a pair of Cummins QSB 6.7 engines. They're 425 horsepower each. They're going to give the boat about 25 knots flat out, and she cruises at 18 knots. And at 18 knots she's using about 100 litres an hour in total. As I mentioned, she's got long range tanks on this one, so she'll hold 3,000 litres and then a bit extra for reserve. So you've got 3,000 litres you can actually run on, and that's giving you well over 500 miles at 18 knots, which is the normal cruising speed of the boat. So it's some serious range for a boat of this type. You can actually see the manifolds right up there at the front for directing it all. There's some proper serious construction going on in here. Again, we look in places like this and see these sections of the hull. You do get a good impression of the way that this boat has been put together. It's yeah, it's pretty unstoppable. Okay, let's come out of here. And I think that is the end of the tour, but it's not the end of the video, because Seaward said to me, look, you know, these boats are not about posing on, they're about going boating on, so we should take you out and show you what boating on one of these is like. So we're going to do that right now. So I've just been joined by Chris Clayton, who is the Managing Director of Seaward, and by Angus, who is the Sales Director, and he's our skipper for today. Hi guys.
Hello, nice to see you.
Yeah, great to meet you.
Hello.
So going to take us out for a run?
Of course.
Awesome.
No problem at all.
Let's go and do it. So I think you can see here just how hands-on the guys from Seaward are, because you don't normally get the Managing Director crewing for you when I'm doing the ropes. So we're in a privileged position today. So Angus, will you just talk us through what you're doing? There's obviously the bow thrusters you're using there.
Yes, of course. This boat's got a bow thruster and a retractable stern thruster.
Oh, okay.
It takes about 3 to 5 seconds to deploy the stern thruster, but it's no time at all. You can, with these ones, put them on to half power and then press a hold button and she'll glue herself to the pontoon while you go and do the ropes.
Brilliant.
Which is really quite good.
Yeah.
But the Nelson hull doesn't really need them, but they're always nice to have.
Right.
As a little get out of jail card.
Yes, of course.
But she's very benign when she's handling. They're very heavy and glued to the water, so they pretty much do what you ask them to do.
Yeah.
Just using the 2 engines now. Gently back her off the pontoon. Incredibly manoeuvrable boat for its size.
I think what's interesting, and what probably people don't really realise, is that you don't use the helm at all, really, do you?
Rarely at this point. It will help to speed up the turn a little if we want to. So put the helm over the turn will be a bit quicker.
Yeah.
But you have a tendency then to forget where you've put it.
Right.
And maybe it's best to leave it alone until you're driving ahead.
Yeah.
And at that point, because she will do everything on the engines that you want her to do.
Right. And obviously with one engine ahead and one engine astern, she'll spin on the spot.
Spin on the spot,
yeah.
Absolutely. Pretty much in her own length.
Yeah. So I'm guessing we're probably not going to do a lot of wave bashing today.
I can make some for you.
Right.
I can make some wash for you. When the Nelson hull is doing its job, and it does it very well, it does chuck a lot of water about.
Right.
So we can always go round and go back over our own wash, which will be pretty sharp.
Yeah.
And reasonably high.
Okay.
But the word for these boats in anything that isn't absolutely horrible weather is unremarkable.
Right.
You come back at the end of the journey and think, well, that wasn't too bad at all.
Yeah, which is kind of the point, really, I guess,
which
isn't
is
it?
the point of what they're doing and what they're supposed to do.
Yeah. And what's the biggest seas that you've been out in with this boat?
In one of these?
Yeah.
About 3.5 metre snotty, nasty stuff coming up the North Sea.
Right.
When we were doing a trip from Lerwick to Bergen in Norway.
Yeah.
About 200 miles. It was night time. And it was pretty horrible. I wouldn't certainly have wanted to be in anything else other than one of these.
No, fair enough.
But she handled it very well. It's never going to be comfortable.
Yeah.
But it handled it better and more comfortably than just about any other boat probably would.
Yeah, 3.5 metres. I mean, that's like twice the height of an average person, isn't it?
Yeah. And it has a long fetch there, so the waves aren't like the Saloon, where you get that incredibly sharp, nasty stuff. They have a length to them, but they still had white curly tops, and they were pretty horrible. Yeah.
And what sort of speed do you do in those conditions?
We were back down to about 13 when it was at its worst.
Right.
the rest of the time this boat in anything under 2 metres will happily chunk along at about 18 knots.
Really? Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
It's based on that Nelson pilot boat hull.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it was designed to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Fantastic. So I think the idea is we're going to go out of here. We're coming out of Ocean Village at the moment. There's some big boats in here. There's a huge Mangusta there, 165 I think that one is. I did actually try and find out whether that was for sale and organise a yacht tour, but I've been unsuccessful, sadly. But we're going out into Southampton waters. It's pretty calm everywhere. It's kind of the perfect conditions for testing pretty much anything other than Seaward, unfortunately. But at least we can have a little play and see what she's like. So we've just cleared the speed restrictions in Southampton water, and Angus is going to wind it up. You notice we're just using the one lever. That's because you can synchronise the engines across and just run them both from the one lever when you're out at sea, which is a nice touch. And you can see already how it's shifting some water. That's very impressive. What sort of speed are we doing there?
We're up at cruising speed now, Nick, 18.5 knots.
Wow, doesn't feel it at all.
No, it doesn't feel like it. Unremarkable.
It's very level as well, isn't it? It doesn't sort of really lift the bow very much at all, which I expected it to, being a semi displacement.
When we can, we've got a little bit of tab on at the moment. Put it away so you'll run it where she should be on reasonably flat water, which is that anchor just sitting on the horizon.
Okay. Fantastic. Let's go and have a look around the outside. And there we go, a Seaward at speed. Fantastic. Okay, should we see if we can create some waves?
I can do that. Once he's gone past us, Nick, I'll make a turn round, start doing some stuff to give you a little bit to play with.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's bring the boat into quite a decent turn actually. Have a look out here. Look at that. Really sweeping round. So there we go, not really perfect Seaward weather. It's perfect boating weather, but we can't really punch this through some big seas, but maybe sometime we'll come out and give it a go when it's properly rough. But in the meantime, thank you Angus, that's been absolutely fantastic.
Thank you very much Nick, it's been great fun.
So Angus is going to give us a quick wind out to maximum speed, and then I think that's probably about as much as we can do out here. Let's give it a go.
Let's go.
So that's giving us, see it on there, it's this one. Pretty much bang on 25 knots, and that is really shifting some water now. Look at that! Yeehaw! Awesome. Thank you, Angus. That's fantastic. I think that's probably about as much as we can do out here today. It's, as I say, perfect boating conditions for everybody else, but it's not really showing what a Seaward can really do, is it?
Not really.
But maybe we can have a go out sometime when it's properly rough.
You're very welcome, Nick.
Awesome. So there it is, Seaward 42. That is a pretty thorough tour, I'm sure you'll agree. I'll catch you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.